Good Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a great day. Some Browns news to talk about a little later in the show. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily will join us, and we will talk plenty about the Baker Mayfield trade as well as what's going on with the Browns roster. We begin with some news from Josina Anderson. Josina Anderson, CBS Sports, tweeting this out. I'm told there's a recording of an interview with an adult son, one of the 12 women the NFL interviewed in the Deshaun Watson case, stating his mom was initially complimentary of Watson in their conversations after the massage, but later switched her account and tone after the negative had come out in the Deshaun Watson allegations. The son intimated that his mother intended to reward his silence per league source. There's a feeling that the NFL was initially cagey about some of the details they learned from the women's son, only mentioning it after they interviewed him. Also, the son's recording later reviewed by Watson's side, revealing the aforementioned details, presumably illuminating why this particular accuser was not included in the 5 women that the NFL ultimately focused on in the disciplinary hearings, only 5 of those 12. Josina Anderson also told that the NFL presented no evidence of violence, force, threat, or coercion in the allegations of the 5 women they focused on at the hearing before Sue L. Robinson. So that's now a second source. It was first reported by Pro Football Focus. All right, so Baker Mayfield traded yesterday. The speculation in some circles was the Browns had some sort of indication what the suspension of Deshaun Watson would be, and that kind of prompted the trade of Baker Mayfield. It was put to Mike Silver on Colin Cowherd's podcast, that very question. Here's Mike Silver on did the Browns know that Deshaun Watson was going to get a lighter suspension, that being the reason that they traded Baker Mayfield yesterday.
They could, but I also think if you're Cleveland, you made that trade for more than 2022. Clearly, you made that trade thinking we just got a guy for a decade or more. We're willing, players in the locker room don't want to hear this, but we're willing to sacrifice 2022 if it means having Deshaun Watson, good to go after that. I also believe it had gotten so toxic with Baker that they, this whole notion that, well, we might not have Deshaun, let's make up with Baker. And like, dude, that wasn't happening. Baker's not the type, first of all, that partly because of his edge and partly because he's smart, you're not going to go to Baker and be like, buddy, we love you, man. And I think they probably like Jacoby Brissett enough that they're thinking, look, if we have to play 8 games with Jacoby Brissett, if we have to play 17, if we have to play 6, we're just going to do it. I think it's bigger than that. And really the Deshaun Watson hijacking of an offseason, think of the ripple effects. So the Browns ended up breaking up with Baker because of their successful pursuit of Deshaun. And really, had they not succeeded, it probably would have happened anyway. It was that bad.
And with that, let's welcome in Quincy Carrier. And Quincy, that is in truth a fact that the Browns' relationship with Baker was fractured when they went after Deshaun Watson, before they got Deshaun Watson. So they were likely going to move on from him. The other part of that, let's back it up. It's very interesting. The more details that come out, the more and more you kind of scratch your head with what the NFL is trying to do here.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover there. So with the NFL, I've made it a point to try not to guess what the NFL is doing. I have witnessed this from a fan's perspective with the NFL and how they go about these suspension processes. It's not necessarily the most sound thing. They're not necessarily the most competent at it. And that competence doesn't always indicate what the suspension is going to be one way or the other, right? A lot of incompetence was exhibited with the Josh Gordon thing. Remember the whole testing, it wasn't within the new threshold in the CBA, but it was within the old threshold, but he still got banned for a year. Like, remember all that weird stuff that used to pop out about the Josh Gordon thing? So when it comes to the NFL, how they handle these things, it's always been a mess. It's been a complaint about the league office for a while. This does not surprise me that the NFL has seemingly made some mistakes in whatever their argument was to this arbitrator. So there's that. Now, as far as the Baker Mayfield thing, it is hilarious to me that people still think that this whole Baker Mayfield thing was connected to whatever they were. Baker Mayfield was going to be moved on from the second they traded for him, Deshaun Watson, and Baker Mayfield. That's when it was set in stone. He would never play for the Cleveland Browns, at least under this current contract, right? So that was settled for months. Now, also to your point, this thing was set in motion week 16, when he voluntarily at the press conference said that he wasn't going to play the next game before talking to team officials, just at the press conference, did not involve his teammates in that decision, did not involve his coaches in that decision, did not involve the Cleveland Browns organization in that decision. Remember, his quote from that press conference, which you can look up on YouTube today, is, "I'm going to talk to my agent and my wife about this, not the Cleveland Browns." And then he sat out the next game. One thing to note, remember, Myles Garrett was injured the week before, still played in that last game, right? So there's all of that combined in this whole setting when it comes to Baker Mayfield. And it was just a situation that probably wasn't going to make it to 2022, no matter if the Browns went for Deshaun Watson or not. It was just headed towards that way.
All right, let's check in voicemail of Truth and Reason. Several fans want to check in with the Baker Mayfield trade, and here's one of them.
Hey, this is Javier from Arizona. I just seen the news right now about Baker Mayfield being traded, and I see that we're only going to give up, or we're only going to have to pay about a little over $10 million for him. I know a lot of people are kind of complaining about that. I think that's a steal right now, because if you think about it, where the cap was at, already at $42 million. We just got $8 million back. We get somebody that's disgruntled off of our roster, potentially a next draft pick, a fourth or a fifth round pick. I like the trade a lot. Go Browns.
All right, as always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, a fourth or a fifth round pick, it's probably the best they were going to get, given the situation. And you know, they got $8 million off of the back to their cap, if you will. So I don't know that it was a steal, but it's probably the best they were going to get.
It's one of those trades, like, when you sell a car, right, you don't want to sell it at a loss, or you don't want to sell it for a bargain, but sometimes you just got to get rid of the car. That's what this trade was, right? They had a car. They could not use it. They were not going to use it anymore, but it was just taking up space, so you had to get rid of it. And instead of thinking of it as, the original value of this car versus what we got, which is Baker Mayfield was a former number 1 overall pick, you end up getting a conditional fifth for it, which is a terrible return if you look at it from that standpoint. But if you look at it from the standpoint of, you were either looking at junking this car for nothing, maybe even paying to junk the car $18 million, to splitting that cost 10.5, and then also, getting back a fifth round pick. It's literally like when you do that thing. You ever done the thing where you have to sell one of your junk cars to one of those people that just pick it up and they pay for the tow and hand you like $200 for your car? That's literally what they did here. They just split the difference and said, all right, just get rid of the car, because they weren't going to have the car go into the season and take up a roster spot. So, I mean, I think there's a credit here to Andrew Berry for sticking so firm and not moving on releasing him, even though the media pressure was so high for him to do so. And I think he squeezed out the best possible deal, given the circumstances that he was handed with Baker Mayfield, given how people feel about him around the league, and given the lack of leverage he had, because there was one team interested in going for him. The fact that he squeezed out a way to keep this money under $11 million and to get a fourth round pick maybe back for Baker Mayfield. If you look at it with the context involved, it's going to be a pretty good trade. If you don't look at it with the context involved, I can see where people can say it's a terrible trade. But I think context is key in this situation.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, let's take a look. This is from Jack Duffin, Orange and Brown Report, one of the cap gurus. It'll be interesting to see how the Browns account for the $10.5 million Mayfield dead cap space. They could use void years to make it $2.1 million in 2022 and then $8.4 2023. So cap space will either be 48, almost 49 million with no void years, or 57.3 million with 4 voidable years. Either way, again, the cap savings, and again, the front office has done a nice job managing the cap.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not even going to question him. Andrew Berry is one of the best around the league. People around the league don't question Andrew Berry when it comes to stuff like this in the Cleveland Browns front office with Dee Podesta and everybody else involved. The Browns are actually one of the front forerunners in this change that we have seen throughout the league of void years, low salary guarantees in the first year, but a lot of signing bonus. Like, they have really revolutionized a lot of things when it comes to this contract signing stuff. So whatever the Browns do with this money, I think a lot of the league is watching how they handle this to steal it from how the Cleveland Browns have handled this. And I've said this before. I don't think the national media has caught up to this. I think there's even some Browns fans who have not caught up to this. But this Cleveland Browns organization, when you talk about Dee Podesta, when you talk about Andrew Berry and that organization right there, right, the main front office of this team, has really formed into one that I think people within the NFL respect as one of the better run organizations in football. Again, it's the brand name of the Cleveland Browns, which is why people outside of it don't really think that. But the people who've been paying attention know that the Browns have been ran pretty well, given everything that they've dealt with over the last couple of years. And nobody is looking at this organization, within the league at least, as a dumpster fire. So, you know, credit out to Andrew Berry. I think a lot of people in the next couple of years will start to understand why he's so well regarded around the league. But yeah, he's probably going to do something that we don't understand yet with this money, that won't make sense when we hear it. But then, like, in a couple of years, be like, oh, that's what he was doing. You know, so I just give him the benefit of the doubt on that. That's his expertise.
Yeah, and the thing that they can do is they can roll it over, and they'll probably wait to see how long they're going to have Deshaun Watson for this year and what happens with his contract before they decide what they're going to do salary cap wise. And to illustrate your point about that, a lot of the national media was saying, oh, they gave Watson the low first year number and the signing bonus because of the potential suspension. They did it with all their long-term contracts to kind of push back the impact of the salary cap. And that's, the national media hasn't caught up with that yet, but they will as they continue to work through the salary cap gymnastics that they're doing.
Interestingly enough, that's something the league has caught up with, right? That's been a trend around the league to do that. And it's been moving so fast that the media not only has not caught up to Andrew Berry doing it, who was one of the first to do it, but the rest of the league following him doing that, right? Like, I don't think we've dug into this enough. I think people saw that, said, that's weird. Why is that happening? Weren't caught up to that and just made an assumption based off of that without looking at other deals to kind of confirm that, because, you know, we live in a hot take society, so you just got to get one out real quick. But yeah, Andrew Berry has been at the forefront of things. I mean, you hear any analytics-based front office, they rave about Andrew Berry. There's no joke that he is well respected around the league.
Quincy Carrier and I just getting things rolling. We're going to take a quick time out. We will continue talking Browns. We'll get Quincy's thought. Jacoby Brissett looking like he could be the starter for at least a portion of the season. Sports4CLE talking Browns when we return. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. So Quincy, with the trade of Baker Mayfield, it's and we've kind of alluded to this before. It was pretty obvious that the Browns preferred Jacoby Brissett to Baker Mayfield, at least in most instances. What do you think the reason for that was? I know you've addressed this on your show, but what do you think the Browns like about Brissett as opposed to Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, one of the things I think we forget, especially as analytics kind of creep into the game more and more, is that we put number values on players and we think that that's the only thing that matters, right? What's their PFF grade? Some people go to Madden overalls, and we kind of look at it like a game of Madden where we're like, well, Baker Mayfield's this overall, Jacoby Brissett's that. Why would I start him over that? But the game of football is a people game, right? It is a game about people. John Harbaugh is not a great game planner by any means, but what he is great with, by all accounts, is people management, right? The people stuff matters in this game more so than any other game, just because there's so many guys on the roster. And what Jacoby Brissett brings is not more talent than Baker Mayfield, but it is more consistency, and it's less of that ability to rock the boat, right? When Baker Mayfield says something, he's a former #1 overall pick. He might have some sway. People might think he's this and that, and then that affects the locker room, and it becomes a faction of sorts. Jacoby Brissett, he's a pro. He came up under the Bill Belichick system. He knows what he's supposed to do, what he's not supposed to do. He's not going to rock the boat, and he's going to accept the role that is given to him, which is if he plays, he's going to probably throw the ball 20, 25 times a game, not going to be asked to take too many risks, and not going to be asked to impact the game extraordinarily, where Baker Mayfield wants that to be the case because he believes himself to be a superstar. And believing yourself to be a superstar is great when you are a superstar, but if you are not a superstar, then that can be a problem. We've seen that manifest itself in 2021. So that is kind of what Jacoby Brissett brings to the table. He's just a more realistic person to work with. Both sides, both parties understand what they will and won't get out of Jacoby Brissett. That includes Jacoby Brissett himself. That includes the Cleveland Browns front office. And that includes the Cleveland Browns coaching staff. We all know what to expect out of Jacoby Brissett. The expectations are not through the roof of him, which means that they can game plan better. There is a reason why this team was able to win games and almost win a critical game with a third-string quarterback last year. It's not because the team is bad, right? It's because the team is really good. And when they could just put all that aside and expect very little out the quarterback position and just roll with that, they were able to put together some game plans that can win some football games just by running the ball and being a defensive-oriented team. That's what they can expect out of Jacoby Brissett. That's why they would prefer to go to Jacoby Brissett because, yeah, Baker is more talented, but with Baker comes more burdens, right? He's going to want to throw the ball more than 30 times a game. He's going to want to be in certain packages. He's going to want certain plays. He's going to want certain players on the field. He might throw a temper tantrum. All these things go in with Baker Mayfield. With Jacoby Brissett, yeah, the high-end talent is not there like it is with Baker Mayfield, the potential to be a high-end talent at least. But what is there is consistency. You know what to expect out of him. And that's just better, right? It's like the difference of remember when Deion Waiters was here as a Cavalier? Deion Waiters was a extremely talented shooting guard, right? He could put up 40, 50 on a given night, but what Deion Waiters could not do is accept the role. So when he was moved for somebody who, ironically, in J.R. Smith, that could accept the role and just do what was asked of him, all of a sudden the front court or the back court of that Cavs team got a lot better just because you got rid of some of the friction that was on that team. It's the same way with the quarterback position. Baker brought a lot of talent. He brought a lot of high end, but he also brought a lot of friction in both the locker room and his play style. And that just ended up being the combination that the Browns couldn't go with anymore. And that's why they very early, they made it clear. Yeah, we'll go with Brissett for a year. We're not going to try to mend things with Baker Mayfield, even if it's a worst case scenario, because we would just rather do that.
So let's put some numbers to this as well. These are kind of interesting numbers when you compare Baker with Brissett. Baker only pressured on 30% of the dropbacks, 10th lowest among the 41 quarterbacks, but he led all quarterbacks by taking sacks on 29% of those pressures. Brissett was pressured 45% of the time. That's most in the NFL, but took a sack on only 16% of the pressures. That's better than the league average. Baker also graded by Pro Football Focus as the 33rd ranked quarterback versus pressure, when Brissett posted the second best grade versus pressure among all quarterbacks. So those give you some numbers that kind of also bear out some of the strengths. Now, people who have watched Brissett will tell you he checks the ball down, he gets it out quickly. Those are all things you can plan for.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Like, you can just know what you can expect out of Jacoby Brissett. And that just means a lot, right? If it's second down and you want to decide whether you want to throw the ball or run the ball, it's going to make your play calling job a lot more difficult if you call a play up that's supposed to be, hey, check the screen, maybe run the dusty under, double under, right? Check the dusty, throw the first down if you can get it. If not, let's throw this out. We're going to run the ball, right? Like, that's some of the decision making you have to make. When you know Jacoby Brissett's going to go 1-2 check, okay, get rid of the ball. And then maybe he doesn't make this spectacular play, but you know that he can do that and not mess it up, then you're going to be fine. With Baker Mayfield, you didn't know what he would do on that play call. So you didn't feel good about calling that play because you knew that even though it was a low-risk play call, right, it's a double under, he might throw the out or something like that because he thinks he sees something and he thinks he can fit it in there. It ends up turning the ball over. A lot of this stuff factors into how you call plays. I think Kevin got a bad rap on the play calling last year because of this, because I think this stuff factored into why he was calling plays like he was more than people understand.
All right, before we go to break, this also something that you covered on your show. Again, Quincy has a show on YouTube. Google Quincy Carrier, you'll find it. Browns have the best roster in the AFC North, according to Pro Football Focus. Your thoughts on that?
Interesting, right? Because if you listen to people who say, oh, this team's going to be a 4-win team without Deshaun Watson, that would surprise you that all of a sudden this team still has like the best roster in this division. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. And honestly, 6 is, if Watson were in a better situation and more concrete playing time situation, I think that would be honestly higher. But you look at the names on this roster, we have dudes who are going to be all, like, we probably have what will be considered in like 10 years as about 50 to 40% of the all-time expansion Browns team on this roster right now. If you look at it, right? Like, who's the best running back to play for the Cleveland Browns since expansion? It's Nick Chubb. Who's the best wide receiver to play since expansion? Is either between Amari Cooper or Josh Gordon, if you look at their resumes, right? And then if you go down the line, Myles Garrett, clearly the best defensive end this team has ever had in expansion. And you can even go back to pre-expansion. It's probably better than that. But you see what I'm saying here. Denzel Ward is up there with Joe Hayden as one of the better corners that they have had. You have almost the all-time expansion Browns team on this roster already. And then you're adding more talent behind that, right? The potential that JOK has here, right? Dearness Johnson might give you something. If not Dearness Johnson, Jerome Ford. We've seen this team is really good at developing running backs over the last couple of years, right? So all of this adds up to this being a really good roster. It should not surprise anybody. The roster has not failed this team the last few years. It has been other situations that have failed this team, but the construction of this roster, especially last year, kept this team from being a 6-win team like they were in 2019, and they were still an 8-win team given the turmoil that they had on the offensive side of the ball.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking Browns. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Quincy, we had talked about this a little bit last segment. Let's take a look. CBS Sports is 5 teams that will take a step back during the 2022 NFL season. And number 1, they have the Titans. Number 2, they have the Chiefs. 3, they have the Browns, followed by the Seahawks and Bears. When you account for a possible punishment for Watson, the fact that the AFC North should be more competitive in 2022 with the Ravens getting healthy, the Bengals emerging as a Super Bowl threat, and the Steelers bringing along a first-round quarterback, it could be tough sledding for the Browns. All right, the Browns were 8-9 last year. It wasn't like they won 12 games. So a step back with the Rock. And they mentioned the Steelers with a first-round pick, that Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger for the last how many ever years. I don't see this at all.
I've seen the Browns draft a lot of quarterbacks in the 20s in that pick. I've never once seen anybody go, oh, they're going to be a good team because they drafted this dude in the 20s, right? This first round. But the Steelers somehow get that. When they drafted the guy that nobody thought should be the first quarterback taken in Kenny Pickett, too, by the way. Like, all right, that was just a reach to add the Steelers in there. But if you think the Browns are going to be significantly worse than 8-9 this year, I think that's a ridiculous take. I honestly do. I think the season will bear that out. I think it's not unrealistic to think without Watson this year, they could still be a 10-win team. I understand the division's tough, but here's my issue whenever somebody's like, oh, well, everything got better this year. Every team's better. One, every team around the league gets better every year. So, yeah, a team might have gotten better, but everybody else got better. So we don't know if that's enough. 2, how many times do we see it throughout the year where this team's supposed to take a step, right? And then they win 6 games, and we wonder what happened to that team throughout the mid-year, and then they end up being terrible. How many times does it happen where a team nobody had expectations for is better than people thought? It happens all the time. So when you try to factor in how good other teams are going to be to this whole thing, it's just a nonsensical thing to do. And I just, again, people need to explain this to me on how a team that went 8-9 with the 33rd ranked quarterback play via Pro Football Focus is somehow going to be worse because of quarterback play. I don't understand that take. Like, they were already playing with the worst quarterback last year. It literally can't get any worse than what they got last year. So what are you talking about? They're going to be worse because of quarterback play. Anything above 30 would be an upgrade. They still won 8 games.
There's only 32 teams, so the 33rd ranked quarterback.
33rd.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right. So Pro Football Focus also ranked the position groups, top position groups. And the AFC North is loaded here. So the Browns have the top-ranked quarterback group, according to Pro Football Focus. The Bengals have the top-ranked wide receiver group. And the Ravens have the top-ranked defensive back group. So, I can't really argue with any of those. I mean, the Bengals with, Chase and Higgins and Boyd are really talented. The Ravens always seem to have a really good group of defensive backs. It shows you how good the AFC North is. But I don't think anybody's taking a step back if you've got a really good offensive line and a really good running back room.
By the way, I just want to point out the only team not represented on that list was Pittsburgh, right? And that's the team that people think. It blows my mind how people can look at the Browns and go, they have 5 running backs that could start on any NFL team right now and go, they'll be worse than 8 wins this year because Baker Mayfield ain't there. That's kind of hilarious to me. But yeah, it's it is interesting. Look, there's a lot of powerful players in this division, but that's nothing new, right? The Bengals had the best wide receiving room last year. The Ravens have had that great defensive back room, not last year because all of them got hurt, but the year before. And the Browns have had this great running back room since about 2019. So, while that is nice to see that they're getting the recognition, those of us who have been following AFC North football for quite a while know that this is nothing new that the Cleveland Browns have going on, that the Bengals have going on, or that the Ravens have going on. These teams have been excellent, especially like the Bengals have been excellent at wide receivers for almost like this entire century, right? If you go back to the 2000s when they had Chad Ochocinco and TJ Houshmandzadeh, they've really carried on great wide receivers throughout there. So, this is nothing new to the AFC North. And we'll see how this battle goes this year with all those position groups. And that's why AFC North is one of the most interesting divisions of football.
All right, so the best offseason move for each and every one of the AFC teams, and this is according to Pro Football Focus. For the Browns, trading for Amari Cooper. Cleveland parted ways with just a 5th-round pick and owes Cooper the same amount of money over the next 3 years that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave Chris Godwin, who is coming off a torn ACL. And we've said it a couple of times. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch Amari Cooper in this offense. It's been a while since we've had a really productive wide receiver.
Yeah, not a bad trade for a terrible GM, right? That people are saying, right? It's not a bad trade that Andrew Berry pulled off there. He's done a great job. I'm starting to be concerned that people are going to start looking at him like Danny Ainge in the NBA, where people just don't pick up the phone because they know they're going to get fleeced. But Andrew Berry, he's done a really good job of roster construction and really done a good job of being patient, picking his spots. We don't have the same struggle that we've had in previous years where it felt like the front office was either being too aggressive in signing guys like Willie McGinnis at the tail end of their careers for too much money and being desperate, or we had GMs who just didn't spend anything and didn't draft anybody and we had no talent on the team, similar to what was going on like 2016, 2017. Now we're at a place where, hey, they're patient in some spots. They make long-term moves. We kind of know who's going to be replacing who before it even happens here because of how this organization is ran. And again, it's one of the better run organizations, I think, in the NFL right now, as far as front office roster construction goes. Yeah,
I agree. And you can actually see there appears to be a plan that the present and long-term as well. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we will continue talking Browns. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. More Browns talk straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carey. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Baker Mayfield trade.
Dave, it's a glorious day in Cleveland. This is Cassius, the quintessential Cleveland Browns fan. Again, I want to say that I'm glad that the Browns traded Baker Mayfield. That quiet, that thing right there with all the Deshaun Watson mess going on. It's a little too noisy over here. Soon we'll get a definitive answer on what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson as far as the suspension. So things can get back to normal. We can focus only on the upcoming season. I do want to say this, that Baker, I hope he does really well in Carolina except for game 1. Don't want him to do well then, but we do wish him the best, and now we can get on with football. Thanks, Dave.
All right, Cassius, always appreciate all of the voicemails. You know, Quincy, as we were talking last segment, something kind of clicked with me. I've been getting some emails from people that are, you know, I've mentioned the 3-dimensional chess that Andrew Berry is playing, and people have kind of pushed back and said that he mishandled the whole Deshaun Watson thing by not letting Baker Mayfield know that they were trading for him, and that the minute he traded for Watson, Mayfield's value went down. Keep in mind the dynamics of that trade were that Deshaun Watson had to waive his no-trade clause to come to the Browns, and I think the Browns were a little bit surprised by that. That's really what created, you know, the issue with Baker Mayfield there. Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and in the Browns side of this story, you know, it deserves to be mentioned too, and I hear it not mentioned a lot, is they told Baker Mayfield they were going to look at, quote, top flight quarterback options, right? That's what was reported at the combine. That's what was told to his camp. That's what has come out about what the front office told Baker Mayfield. And then they ended up kicking the tires on Deshaun Watson. They felt like that coincided with exactly what they said. Baker Mayfield might feel differently about if Deshaun Watson is a top flight quarterback or something like that. Maybe that's where the confusion came in. But that's what was reported. That's what's been out, that the Browns were going to look at and kick the tires on it. And let's be honest here. His Baker Mayfield needs to be realistic about the body of work he has put out over his entire career and ask himself this question. Am I undeniable? If the answer is no, then you can get moved in the NFL. People will move on from you, especially at the quarterback position, especially when somebody that teams do feel like, on the field at least, is a undeniable talent. They will move on. And that's what happened to Baker Mayfield. That's just the cold-hearted business of the NFL. Teams are trying to improve every day, and they're trying to improve at your position. And if you aren't one of the best, you are always going to be able to get moved. And also, like, Matt Ryan got moved because of this whole situation too. Like, the Baker situation, like, I don't know why people are honing in as if the Browns were going to trade Baker Mayfield before they even kicked the tires on Deshaun Watson, which is ridiculous, right? Because why would they have done that? If the Browns did do that, the same people would be calling them dysfunctional. This is one of those things where people just want to be critical one way or the other on this because they're sympathetic to Baker Mayfield. And that just is what it is. I don't think it mattered when they did it. The value was going to be the value on Baker Mayfield because the true leverage in a Baker Mayfield trade wasn't when you traded him, it's how many people wanted him, and it ended up being not that many. Right. It ended up being just Carolina. And when that's the case, it's going to be low trade value.
Well, and you know, look at, you know, the Colts went out and solved their problem. The Falcons went out and solved their problem. All of those could have come to the Browns with Baker Mayfield. They found other options.
And, you know, those teams knew that Baker would probably be available, right? Like, those teams knew that Baker would probably be available, decided not to go in that direction. Atlanta didn't want to go in that direction. The Colts didn't want to go in that direction. A number of teams decided, I'd rather go with James. I'd rather go with Marcus. I'd rather go with Mitchell. I'd rather go with Matt, right? Than try to kick the tires and see what was up on the Baker Mayfield thing. A lot of this just comes down to not a lot of teams wanted him. You know, if some teams wanted him, he would have been moved for a substantial package. But if you only got one person to bring to the dance, well, that person will get whatever they want at concessions, right? Like, they're just going to get it because they're the only one at the dance, right? So you just got to do what you got to do. But that's I hear people talking about this is an Andrew Berry problem. I don't know how much more leverage he could create given that there was one team interested.
All right. I know, again, you've addressed this on your show. 2022 breakout candidates. Who do you think is primed for a really big year for the Browns next season?
I've gone with Grant Delpit on this one, right? Because we always talk about after a big lower extremity injury that one of the best years for that player is the year after they get a full year playing with that injury, because now they can feel free and go loose. And I think Grant, we saw the talent, especially at LSU in 2018, one of the best safety in the country. 2019 kind of fell off a bit, but we saw some of the things that we wanted to see from Grant last year, right? Grant was in the box hitting. Grant was tough. Grant was tackling well, right? That was the big question about Grant Delpit. Now that we know he can tackle, now that we know that he can be physical in the way that we want him to be, all right, let's let him learn this offense. Let's let him be comfortable with that Achilles coming back from that injury. And let's see if he can fly around and become an impact player, because adding another impact player to that secondary when you already got John Johnson and you have Denzel Ward and you have Greg Newsome, seems like overkill. But boy, if you could have 4 guys who are just impact players there, that defensive line might get 100 sacks.
Quincy Carrier, as always, man, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
No problem.
All right, Quincy Carrier, make sure you catch his show on YouTube as well. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one again about the Baker Mayfield trade.
Dave, this is Cassius, the quintessential Cleveland Browns fan. Baker Mayfield is gone, traded to the Carolina Panthers. The one thing I want to say about that is, how do you feel about Baker coming back to play the Cleveland Browns the first game of the season? Now, listen, I believe that's going to be a dogfight, because Baker going to come in with so much to prove. If Deshaun Watson was going to be our quarterback, I'd be really, really confident in the Cleveland Browns. But I don't know how I feel about having to go up against a Baker with Jacoby Brissett the first game of the season. We're about to see. What do you think about that trade, though? What do you think about him going to Carolina? I think it was for a fourth-round pick. Let me know what you think. Thanks for taking my call. Go Browns!
There's Cassius with his barking. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily. Casey, I was kind of joking around with one of our producers. I said, Baker Mayfield is as likely to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in week 1 as he is to throw a pick 6 at the end of the game that's returned to lead to the Browns defeating the Panthers. You don't know what you're going to get. The Browns needed to move on from Baker Mayfield. I think they got as much as they were going to get for him.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people out there disappointed in the compensation. They only got a 5th. That's what I keep hearing. Well, what they got was out of the Baker Mayfield business, which is I think that was priorities 1 through 10. And whatever they received back was just the cherry on top. And as far as facing Baker week 1, and I know the perceived notion of him with the chip on his shoulder and everything, but if this defense is what I think it could be, if you were to ask Joe Woods behind closed doors and get a truthful answer, I bet he likes this matchup. Everybody on that defensive side of the ball knows the score. They know what Baker's going to try to do. It'll be a fun lead up, but the bottom line is, they're going to be rolling a rookie left tackle out there in Iquanu. Well, here's Myles Garrett. I can see that getting pretty ugly for Baker pretty quick.
Yeah, and we know from watching, pressure around those tackles is not something that he is built to sustain a whole lot of. All right, this one's also kind of interesting. So this is from Dan Orlovsky from NFL's First Take, and it is about just the whole situation with Baker going to the Panthers and what he thinks the Panthers can be.
This is why I think this is a playoff team with Baker Mayfield, the guy we saw 2 years ago, because that's the last time he was healthy. He was 3rd in the NFL in QBR, led them to the playoffs. Number 1, this is a top 10 defense in the NFL for the Carolina Panthers. Has one of the better young defensive lines in the league with Brian Burns and Derek Brown. They also get J.C. Horn back, who was their superstar corner, first-round draft pick from the South Carolina. They'll get him back healthy. So this is going to be a very good defense. Number 2, you talked about the improvement of the offensive line, but you talk about drafting a tackle top 6 overall isn't a big deal if he's a really good player. It's 20% of the offensive line. If Ike Ekwonu is what many offensive line people say he is going to be, that's a huge jump in their performance. Brady Christensen, they took in the 2nd round last year at offensive line. He's in year 2. They signed Austin Corbett in free agency. This has a chance to be a much improved offensive line. Ben McAdoo comes over as their play caller. Whatever you want to say with him as a Giants fan, the commitment to say, we're going to run the football is a commitment. It's a big deal. It matters when it comes to your identity. So I like the fact of that. You mentioned Christian McCaffrey. That's a big question mark. But the flip side is if he is healthy, he's one of the best playmakers in all of football. This is the best wide receiver group, and you can't debate that Baker Mayfield has ever played with. About Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and Rashard Higgins. That's the best wide receiver group he's ever had. Maybe not the total skill group, best wide receiver group.
Casey, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr. weren't necessarily. I'll listen to the argument that DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are better, but I don't know that a lot of people are going to agree with you. And you had Kareem Hunt and you had Nick Chubb. The surrounding cast, it's not an upgrade for Baker Mayfield. It's just not. It's a downgrade.
I just hope Dan Orlovsky didn't pull a hamstring reaching for that tape. That's wild to me. It seems it's crazy how the national media has just flipped overnight on the upper bound limits of Baker Mayfield now that he's on the Carolina Panthers. But I think if you look at the reality of the situation, Ben McAdoo runs a pro-style system. So you're going to see Baker's going to see something similar to what he did in 2019 under Freddie Kitchens. That really doesn't suit his skill set all that much. Now there are some really comparable weapons. DJ Moore is an up-and-coming receiver. Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, is a premier back in this league. It's been a while since we've seen that, but it's if he's healthy, it's there. So I get it. I still don't see this team competing for a playoff spot. I still think they finished dead last in their division. Now, where they may have been a 4-win team under Darnold, maybe they are a 6 or 7-win team under Mayfield. I don't think that's enough to save Matt Rule's job, but it does give Baker a platform so he can show other teams what he could possibly do in 2023 and going beyond. But yeah, I don't see them as a playoff team with Baker Mayfield.
No, and again, I think he's an upgrade over what they had. And I think he can be a competent to slightly above average NFL quarterback without question. All right, this one is from Dawg Pound Daily. Winners and losers from the Baker Mayfield trade. So the winners, they're going to go with Rashard Higgins, who is a wide receiver with the Panthers now. Secondly, Baker Mayfield. And then they say everyone following the Browns. And again, just to kind of move on from Baker Mayfield. Losers, they say the Panthers' chances at limiting turnovers. Sam Darnold and Robbie Anderson, who came out and was actually trying to back Sam Darnold and said he didn't want anything to do with Baker Mayfield. Again, it'll be interesting to see. Absent week one, I hope Baker Mayfield does just fine with the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, and I was looking at that. I think Higgins, Hollywood's definitely a winner in this. He's going to step right in with some familiarity with Baker. It'll allow him to kind of put his stamp on where he's at in his career when he gets to Carolina and get him on the field sooner and maybe solidify him as that third receiver over Terrence Marshall. Baker, like I said earlier, he's going to get a platform to show what he can do. As you know, as of 2 days ago, he wasn't going to get that. So now that he has a spot, yeah, he's definitely a winner in this. And I don't just limit it to everyone following the Browns. I'll limit it. It's everyone who watches NFL content. I'm sure everybody was sick of seeing this on all the shows. They get to move on, at least until the build up for week one. It'll become a non-story here in a couple days, and they can move on. But the losers, like Sam Darnold's a huge loser in this, and I mean he can wipe his tears with his $18 million, but they said limiting turnovers. Darnold has more interceptions than games started, and Baker's just slightly less than that. I think Baker has 56 interceptions and 59 total starts. So there's definitely going to be some turnover there. And Robbie Anderson, we'll see how he plays it. He's a skilled receiver. I know he suffered some dropsies in the last couple seasons, but he's a highly skilled guy, especially down the field. And Baker likes to take shots, so they might be able to find a rapport. And I'm sure that after they get on the field, they'll be able to put that to bed.
And Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we will continue talking Browns. We'll talk a little bit about Deshaun Watson when Sports4CLE returns. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily, Mike Garafolo from NFL Network, just with some of the intricacies and some of the things that are being weighed out by Judge Sue L. Robinson as she will have to go through the briefs next week and come upon a ruling in the Deshaun Watson disciplinary case.
The precedent on this one might be difficult. With Deshaun Watson, at some point the number matters, right? So you could you've got a lot of folks saying, well, 2 grand juries passed on this, and this is all kind of, it's been settled and really innocent until proven guilty, and you don't have this evidence that shows that things clearly happened. At some point, the number matters. You've got 26 women saying that he acted in a pretty consistent manner from their accounts of what happened. So, you know, I think there should be a suspension here. I think it should be pretty firm. Is a full season too much? I don't know. I'm really curious to see which way this is going to at least start with Robinson's decision.
And again, the briefs are due by Monday, and the NFL and everything that we're hearing expects Sue L. Robinson to, quote, take her time working through and rendering a decision. So, Casey, when you look at that, he mentioned the 24 counts, and some of the things are head scratchers. So the NFL interviewed 12 of them. They only brought 5 of those 12 claimants in the civil lawsuits into the hearing. So you would think, common sense would tell you they'd take the 5 that were that they had the most evidence in. And there's no force, no coercion. There's a lot of things that are lacking that, as you continue to hear things, are just kind of head scratchers with this whole thing.
Well, you said the key word, evidence. And that's what the judge, a former judge, that's what she's going to weigh. It's evidence. It's not going to be the number. It's going to be what they could prove. I mean, that's what it has to go on. And just based off the precedents, there's no way that she gives the NFL what they're asking for with an indefinite, because there is no precedence for that. That's just what it's going to come down to. So it's going to be, she's going to weigh everything, and she's going to come up with a decision. Now, if she decides that he did not violate the conduct policy based on the evidence, that kind of leaves the NFL high and dry. It won't even be able to appeal it. But if she gives any punishment at all, that's going to put the ball back in Rodgers' court if he wants to take it there. I kind of find it hard to believe that they're going to undermine her on her first case. They both sides agreed. The NFLPA and the league agreed to her being the adjudicating officer in this matter, going forward for all the disciplinary, things they have to go through. So I can't see them really undermining her on the very first case. But if the NFL doesn't get what they want, I guess anything's on the table, if she issues a punishment.
Yeah.
But the key word's evidence.
Yeah, and it's a very valid point. Again, it was a collectively bargained agreement. And it's a federal judge. So the NFL has been known to do what they want to do, but it's a bad look for the league if they, say, this former this judge that we collectively bargained to be a disciplinary officer, she didn't know what she was doing. That's just not. I don't think that benefits the league and what they're trying to do. All right, this from Dog Pound Daily: 5 nightmare scenarios for the Browns in the 2022 season, and let's run through them. Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt get injured. 4, the secondary falters. 3, Kevin Stefanski play calling baffles. 2, wins don't come early. And number 1, Watson suspended all season. And I guess number 1 would be 1 and 2 would be the most concerning, because after those first 4 games, the schedule gets significantly tougher. And if you're without Deshaun Watson all season, that's an uphill. You're going uphill.
Yeah, it would definitely make for a long, enduring season. But the wins not coming early would be very, very concerning, because they are kind of set up to get off to a fast start, even with Brissett being the starting quarterback in the event of Watson's suspension. I would say out of all of those, and it sounds crazy and blasphemous to say, this team's actually kind of built to handle an injury to either Kareem Hunt or Nick Chubb, just based on their depth and the way they kind of operate their system, with Dearness kind of subbing in for Nick. And now with Ford in the mix, kind of being like a substitute for Hunt, it kind of lends itself to where they could get by as long as it wasn't a season-ending type affair. But yeah, if Watson gets suspended all year, everything changes. The whole outlook for everything, even possible people being traded that we don't even think are on the block right now. Everything would be on the table if they have to kind of punt on the season from a Super Bowl aspiration standpoint with Watson being gone.
Let me ask you this. If Watson is suspended for a whole year, do you think they at least pick up the phone and see what it would cost to get a Jimmy Garoppolo? Because it's a guy who's won. He's won at a high level in this league.
I definitely think they're going to bring someone in. I don't necessarily think it'll be Garoppolo just because of how much money he's due, but they definitely have to bring another guy in who can play. You know, like Dobbs is good in theory, but Dobbs is here basically as a support system for Watson himself. They share the same quarterback coach in the offseason. They kind of see the game the same way. He's kind of there to be that echoing voice in the quarterback room and on the sideline. He's not, you know, he's only attempted a handful of passes, so he's not someone you feel comfortable. You know, if something were to happen to Brissett, you have to have someone there who can just throw off the jacket, go in and handle business for as long as they need to. I keep going back. Like I would find out what they could do to get Gardner Minshew. I think that's a guy that he could thrive in that kind of role. You know, kind of like a great value Ryan Fitzpatrick. You know, I think that's kind of who I would go for, or Ryan Fitzpatrick himself. If you can somehow convince him to hold off retirement for 1 year, to hold the clipboard and be the guy in case of emergency, I think that'd be a best case scenario.
Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily, as always. Casey, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Hey, anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
All right, Casey Kinnamon, make sure you read him over at Dog Pound Daily. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. See you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night. See you tomorrow on Sports for CLE.